Welcome to QuickBooks tutorial. So where we teach you everything QuickBooks. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to import invoices with multiple items in QuickBooks Online. So what exactly is invoice with multiple items? So that's another thing we need to understand. So let me quickly take you to my desktop before we discuss the QuickBooks Online. Now, this is QuickBooks on the desktop. Now, this is what we mean by invoice with multiple line items. Now, assuming you want to create an invoice, the moment you select a customer right here, you want to select different line items. So this is what we mean by different line item. So you have more than one line items on your invoice. So when you talk about importing invoices with multiple line items, we need to know whether you are importing them from your QuickBooks desktop or an already made Excel sheet or Excel spreadsheet. So because the import can be either directly from QuickBooks desktop or Excel sheet. So let's discuss the first one. If you're importing from QuickBooks desktop to QuickBooks Online, the first thing you need to do is to launch your QuickBooks desktop, log into your company file. So I assume that you already have all your company files set up right here. Do you understand? That means you've been using QuickBooks for a long time and then you want to migrate to online. So this is how you do that. You go to company on your QuickBooks desktop and then you see export your company file to QuickBooks Online. Export your company file to QuickBooks Online. The moment you click this, a new window will pop up. Do you understand? A new window will pop up, and this window will guide you on how to export all your data to QuickBooks Online. Now, for you to comment export to QuickBooks Online, you need to be sure that you have your login details. And then I strongly advise, because I found out that a lot of clients make the mistake of going to subscribe first for QuickBooks Online before they come here to export. So the first thing to do is to export first. When you run your export, QuickBooks will automatically create an account for you online. Now, when QuickBooks create an account for you online, then you can then log into that online platform to subscribe. So don't subscribe before you run the import of your QuickBooks data from desktop to online. Rather, export first before you subscribe. If you rush to subscribe, and then what happens when you try to export? QuickBooks will create another company file entirely. This is actually a problem I found when I tried to export a client data. I didn't know that they've actually created a company online. So they were thinking that I was going to export the data into their existing online, hoping that the company files will be merged together. It doesn't work like that. So first run your export to QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks automatically creates a demo account. Then from that QuickBooks Online, you can then subscribe. So that's the easiest thing to do. So here you can see get your data into QuickBooks Online. See how everything looks with your own information. So everything you have on your QuickBooks desktop will automatically be subscribed. So right here, you then click on Get Started. Now look at the option again. You see, let's bring your data to QuickBooks Online. Bring all your company data. All your list settings transaction will be brought over. Now choose what to bring over. Here, ideal if you have a large file or if you don't want to bring all your data. So you can choose this option and say choose what to bring in to the QuickBooks. Now all list and balances or only list. So if you say all list and balances, right here, QuickBooks will only bring in all the account lists. Do you understand? If you say QuickBooks will bring it like here, chart of account, customer, vendors, item, and all other lists plus account balances. Now, if you say I only want to import right here, you can see chart of account, customers, and all other lists. Do you understand? And then you select right here, you can see the list of details that QuickBooks is going to bring in uh, into your QuickBooks Online. So if you say you only want to select customer lists, now if you say you want to bring in all lists, it will bring in every list into your account. But I strongly advise there's no way you'll be using QuickBooks Desktop that you want to leave out some and then get the rest. Accounting is accounting, and you need all the information on your desktop for you to take decisions. So the best advice is to use the first option, bring all your data. Then you click on continue. So you see right here, choose your home currency. You'll be required to choose your home currency. So your home currency is US dollar. You choose US dollar and then you click continue. And then if you already have an existing account online before, having an account online does not necessarily mean that you have a company file created. You can actually create multiple company files under one account. So I wouldn't advise you to start creating multiple accounts. You can use one account to manage multiple company files. But unlike the desktop, as you're creating multiple company files, be ready to pay subscription per company on the QuickBooks Online. But on the desktop, you can create multiple accounts without having to pay because you already have the software. So the software allows you to create as many companies as you want. So if you already have a QuickBooks Online account, you come here, you click on yes, sign me in, you click continue. So the QuickBooks will then ask you to log in. This is it. So when you click on login, and then you can proceed to the next stage. Now, proceeding to the next stage means that you'll be able to run your direct upload from your desktop into your QuickBooks Online. So what happens here is that QuickBooks will automatically import all your data. Now, note at some point they will ask you your opening balance date. There are some questions they will ask you, which I think is peculiar to your line of business, and I think you should be able to answer that question seamlessly. So that is how to import from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. Now, what then happens if you and what type of import what are the type of data you can import into QuickBooks Online? Like I said, you can import all your account lists, you can import all your account balances, you can import all your transactions from your desktop. Your transaction covers all the invoices you have created, all the payments you have received, all your expenses, all your bank data, bank transactions, all the adjustment, journal entry. So everything you have on your desktop, exactly as it is, you can run direct import into QuickBooks Online. So that is the kind of data you can import from your desktop to your online. Now, how to import invoices with multiple line item into QuickBooks Online. Let's also assume that you want to import from Excel. You're already using QuickBooks, so you're already using an Excel sheet to track your data, just like we have some of our clients, in case of some of our clients, and then you want to import them into QuickBooks. Now, note when you're importing invoice, there are invoices with one line item, there are invoices with multiple line items. So this is how invoices with multiple line item work. So I already have a standard Excel sheet right here, which I have downloaded from QuickBooks Online. So it's good that QuickBooks already give you invoice templates, so it makes it easier. So when you go to QuickBooks, you're able to download the invoice templates. So this is how to download the invoice template on your QuickBooks Online. When you go to your QuickBooks Online, just like you see here, you click on this and then you select import data. Now, when you click on import data, QuickBooks will give you different options. So you want to import your invoices, you click on invoice. Then once you click on invoice, you can see right here, you are able to see what is required. Now here, you see here, preview what is required. When you click on it, QuickBooks will show you the important account, the important column that you need. For instance, you need the customer. You can't create an invoice without the customer. Very important. You need invoice number, terms, invoices. So you can see the ones that are asterisk. You can see here, these ones that are asterisk are actually very, very important. Invoices, customer, you can see here. Then you have your item, then you have your amount. Now, when you want to import an invoice with different line item, this is the sample. You click here, you click on download example. Download example will show you the template that is required before you can run your import. So this is an example. Here I've downloaded the templates and you can see you have the invoice number. So this is what multiple line item means. Multiple line item means that when you invoice a customer, it's not just a one line item invoice. It's actually multiple line item invoice, meaning that the customer pays for multiple items, maybe like multiple services or multiple products. That's what it means. The customer pay for multiple products or multiple service. So here, this customer is Chris Smith. Now, this is the invoice date, the date of your invoice. So meaning that on your own Excel spreadsheet, you need to customize your Excel spreadsheet to look like this. Now, my best advice is you can split it month on month. So you can import month on month. Maybe the first month, you come here, you just copy and paste from your existing Excel sheet to this one. So you can delete. The essence of this is just to guide you on how your invoice template should look like. Now, note this, you can see that the invoice numbers are the same. Why are they the same? It tells you that this particular transaction, they actually won invoice. That's what it means. And you really don't need to repeat the customer name again. If you have inputted the customer name right here and then you have the same invoice number, QuickBook assumes that the same customer also owns this invoice. That's why the line item, the invoice number is there. So one of the key feature that QuickBooks uses to lump up multiple line items on one invoice is the invoice number. So if the invoice numbers are different, then it assumes that they are different invoice. The reason is that you can't create multiple invoice with the same number. It's not possible in QuickBooks. You only have each invoice has a unique number attached to it. So if you have different columns or different rows like this having the same invoice, QuickBooks assumes that everything under this particular row they all belong to one invoice. So one of the things you need to tie all this line item to one invoice is the invoice number. Then the first row, you just input the name of the customer. You don't have to repeat the name of the customer again. Now, the next thing is to enter the date. You can see that you don't have to repeat the first column multiple times. The date of the invoice, the due date, the terms, and then the memo. Now, this is where you have the product name. Now, you'll note that the product names are actually different right here. You can see here, the product names are actually different. And then you can also input the product number. And then note again, you can see the quantity of each of the products here, and then the rates of the product plus the amount of that product, then the currency of that product. You can see here. So you see that you really don't have to repeat all the column. The only thing you need to repeat is the product item, which is the multiple items. Now, it's because of the fact that each multiple items might have a particular unit or a specific quantity that you are selling, and then the rates. That's all. So even the service date is just one. So when you are creating an invoice for multiple line items, or you are customizing an Excel sheet for multiple for an invoice with multiple line items, the first row shouldn't be repeated. Do you understand? You don't have to repeat the first row like the customer name multiple times, the invoice date multiple times. No. What has tied all these particular item together as a multiple items on one invoice is the invoice number. Do you understand? So if, for instance, I come here and I change this invoice number to 2, what happened? This particular item that you have as gardening will no longer be merged or be seen as part of the multiple items on this invoice, because the invoice number is different. Rather, it will merge these three together, which is the same invoice number. So when you are creating or trying to import invoice with multiple items, you make sure the invoice numbers of the multiple items are the same. That is what ties all the items together. Now you see the second part again. The invoice number is 102. So that tells you that this is a different invoice entirely from the first one. And then because they have the same invoice number, let me change it. Because they have the same invoice number, what happened? You are actually going to see them as what? Multiple line items on one invoice. Then you can see trimming and soil. Trimming and soil. Then you see this is the name of the customer. You don't have to repeat the name of the customer again. The date, you don't have to repeat the date again. The only thing you're going to repeat on each row is the number of items you're importing. Do you understand? And then the quantity that you're selling, then the rates. So the quantity times rate will give you the amount. And so in some cases, you can even take out the item rate and then you leave only the amount in case you cannot ascertain the quantity, but you know the actual amount. So if you want to break it down, you can include the item. Note, when you're bringing in a product or an inventory into QuickBooks Online, you need to first activate your QuickBooks Online you need to turn on the inventory tracking feature on QuickBooks Online. So you go to product and services here, and then if you click on new, you notice that you can see here inventory is not turned on. So you can click turn on inventory tracking. So don't run an import without checking or confirming that your inventory is turned on, because if you do that, it will not be able to, in short, there won't be any column to accept whatever you want to import. So that is very critical too. So let's go back to our import invoice. So like I said earlier, if you want to tie multiple items to one invoice, what you need is the invoice number. Like you can see here, this is just one invoice. So this one item, that's why you have only one line, one invoice number on one row. You can see invoice 1004. That means there are three multiple line items, which is this soil, rock, and trimming. So to tie multiple line items together on one invoice, the only thing you need is the invoice number. Then the first row of that particular invoice on your Excel sheet would have all the details. You don't have to repeat it again. Let's say this customer is this Karuna, you're now coming to enter Karuna. No, QuickBooks will. I think it's not really necessary. You don't need that. It's extra stress. As long as you have repeated the number, just make sure that you have the same invoice. You can see here, as long as this invoice number 104 is tied to this customer, QuickBook will automatically tie the rest of the item to this particular invoice. It's as simple as that. And then you can see the multiple line items right here. So that's how to import, that's how to prepare your Excel sheet for import into QuickBooks. Now, once you're done with all these things, the next thing you need to do is to go to File and then Save. Remember, when you're saving your documents, your Excel sheet, you save as CSV. You save as CSV. So here, let's say QuickBooks invoice. So you're saving as CSV. Note the format. You have to save it as CSV. Then you go back to your QuickBooks Online. You click. You can see already it's already indicated your CSV can have no more than 1,000 rows. So that's the maximum, 1,000 rows. Now note the little settings right here. Add new contacts that don't already exist in QuickBooks. It's possible that as you're importing to QuickBooks, some of the customers you have on your Excel sheet might not be in QuickBooks Online. You might not have added them in QuickBooks Online. So before now, QuickBooks will require you to add all the customers, and that's extra stress. Imagine that you have imported an item with over 500 information, 500 data, and then out of 500, like 300 300 customers are not in QuickBooks. Would you have to start putting them or adding them one after the other? It's stress. It means you have to cancel your import or pick the ones that are yet to be imported, go back to your QuickBooks, add them manually or bulk up before you go back to import. So what QuickBooks has done here is to make it easier for you to automatically create those customer even if they are not in QuickBooks. Then add new product and service that don't already exist in QuickBooks. Again, if those items does not exist in QuickBooks, QuickBooks automatically creates them for you. So this saves you the extra stress of trying to add items that don't exist in QuickBooks. So if you want to check this, I like to check this so that when Google checks again for checks my Excel sheet, it helped me create customers. Now, the downside of this part is that if I add a customer that doesn't exist in QuickBooks into QuickBooks from Excel to QuickBooks, what if there's a spelling error? Do you understand? I'm supposed to add Charles, for instance, and then the process of entering Charles on QuickBooks on the Excel sheet, I omitted the S, but on the online there's S there. So if I check this, Quick will automatically create a new customer called child, and that's also going to duplicate my customer. So you also need to be extra careful when when you are selecting this first option. Even second option too, you need to be sure that spelling errors. In short, I like to do a manual cross check of the invoice before I can run the import. At least if that 5 minutes to 10 minutes check can save me the stress of trying to find an error or review errors again, I think it's worth doing. So if you're checking this, like I said, note the areas of concern before you can go ahead to check this and import your data. Then you click browse. Under browse, you go to where we saved it. You can see QuickBooks invoice. You then click open here and then make sure this is checked. Then you click next. Now you can see right here, you are now set to map. So what we're supposed to do is to map each of the column on our Excel sheet. So we want to identify each of these column on our Excel sheet. So we'll go back to QuickBooks. So you can see invoice number to invoice number. You can see as it is on our Excel sheet, then customer to customer, invoice date to invoice date, due date to due date. So I always advise that you use the template from QuickBooks to make it extremely easier. So you can see here is even giving you date option of selecting your date format. What's your date format? If you go to QuickBooks here, you can see date format is day, month, and year. So you go back to QuickBooks Online, and then this is going to be our day, month, and year, which is this format. Then you have your due dates, you have your terms, service date. Now, this is the item itself. This is the item. Note on the Excel sheet, even if the items are in multiples, you have already tied those items with the invoice number. So you don't have to bother about importing multiple invoice and then seeing them, because the problem sometimes might be that if you import multiple items, QuickBooks will create different invoices for different items. So for you to lump those items together, invoice number is very, very important. Invoice number is very, very important. Then item descriptions and then the rest, your currency and every other thing. Then you click on next. So this is it here. 4 new invoices will be imported. So 3 customers will be added. Why is 3 customers added? Because those customers are not in QuickBooks. Can you see that QuickBooks has already read your files? It has read your files and it will tell you the customers that will be added automatically. And then 5 new products or services would also be added. You can see trimming, design, gardening, soil, rock. You can see here, and then you click on start import. So did you see how to import from your Excel into QuickBooks Online, especially invoices with multiple line items? So if I click on Start Import, you can see here importing your invoice where when you're on the case. So QuickBooks will process the invoice import. You can see that QuickBooks has already told you the number of customers that are not in QuickBooks. So here you can see some invoice can be imported. The following field. So if there's invoice 1002, this was successfully imported. So you can then go back to your invoice to see invoice 1002. What happened right here? You can then look through your invoice 1002 to know where the whole issue is coming from. So if you go back to invoice 102, like right here, I can see that the reason is because there was no currency assigned. Here, I was supposed to assign currency. You can see that I'm supposed to assign currency to this particular invoice. But currency was not assigned. That's why the invoice was not imported. But when you assign currency, automatically it will be imported into QuickBooks. You can see here, change this currency to match what you use for your account receivable. So once you're done, you click on done, and then it's already imported. If you go back to your transactions, let's say you go to your let's check more. So let me go back to my business. Okay. So you can see here, you can see these are the invoices we have imported, the one we just imported right now to the system. So if you go to get things done, you can see here, you can see the new customers that have been added to the system. You can see the invoices that we just imported. You can see right here, Chris Smith. Let's go back to our invoice on Excel. You can see Chris Smith. So we go back to QuickBooks Online. So if I go back to this customer, now, can you see the invoice with multiple line items? Did you see that? Why is QuickBooks tying all these multiple line items together? Because of the invoice date. So this is very, very simple. Shouldn't be too difficult for you to understand. So common mistakes to avoid when importing. I think I mentioned one of the mistake. First one is not adding your invoice number. Do you understand? Or separating using different invoice number. Assuming this is 1001 and I use 1002, 1003. QuickBooks will treat them as different invoices. So what QuickBooks will use to tie all these items together into one invoice is their invoice number. So that's one of the common mistakes a lot of people make. That's one of the common mistakes people make. Other mistakes can be minute. For instance, not adding currency, just like you're saying right there, and then maybe not adding date. So you need to review each of the columns in QuickBooks on Excel sheets before you can run your import. But the most common mistakes are number one, the invoice number, and then number two, you have your currency. There could be other mistake, but I just mentioned the most important of them. Then review each of the columns before importing. This is very important. You can review each column: invoice number, customer, invoice date, due date, terms, location, memo, product, description, item. Now note that if you are importing service item, you don't need quantity and item rate. You don't need quantity and item rate, except Your service item also is configured in such a way that you can charge based on number of users or number of clients, or let's say number of, yes, number of users, or if it's number driven. Let's assume you're charging for training 15 people and you're charging $5,000. Then quantity will be 15, rate will be $5,000. That's where you can still add item quantity. But if you don't need that, you can still take that out. That's why QuickBooks still give you the option of selecting the columns that you want before you run your import. It's very, very important. Then let's also look at other things here. Best extension, Excel extension for QuickBooks import. I've already discussed that, which is Excel. If you want to import into QuickBooks Online, the best Excel extension is Excel. Sorry, CSV. Sorry, it's CSV. CSV is the best Excel extension. It's seamless. At the point of saving, make sure you save as CSV. That would make it easier for you to run your import. So I hope you got value. I hope this tutorial is able to guide you and also help you understand how to import invoice into QuickBooks, especially invoices with multiple items. So if it's the first time you're watching this channel, or if you find this video useful, kindly hit the subscription button, turn on the notification bell. And if you have a question, maybe you're trying to import and then you have issues, you're not able to do that, kindly drop a comment and tell me what your challenge is. I will try as much as possible to respond to you and then see how I can support you to process your multiple items on QuickBooks Online.